My name is George Hope Chidziwisano. I am a PhD student studying Information and Media at Michigan State University. This presentation is about our research on investigating the process of designing digital financial systems for Chama groups in Kenya. In Kenya, there are over 300,000 Chamas. Chama is a Swahili word for come together. These are typically locally organized groups that meet on a regular basis to contribute money, and funds are distributed among members via loans and emergency support. A majority of Chamas consist of women, and they contribute about 18% to Kenya's GDP. Chamas are important for economic development because they provide financial support to small-scale businesses that do not have access to bank loans. Despite their importance, Chamas face challenges, including group members defaulting on loans and lack of financial transparency. The widespread adoption of mobile phones in Kenya presents an opportunity to address these challenges by digitizing Chamas. We explored the organization of Chamas and the feasibility of using digital financial systems in these groups. We were guided by the following research questions. How are Chamas organized? How do Chamas track their finances? And how to digitize financial activities in Chamas? To answer these questions, we initially designed SmartChama based on our prior experience and current literature. The initial design allows members to collaboratively save money, request and approve loans, and share dividends at the end of each cycle. The system is integrated with M-Pesa to allow transaction between group members' personal account and the Chama group account. We conducted our study in Kisumu, Kenya, a port city on Lake Victoria. We used snowball sampling to recruit 48 participants from 7 Chama groups. Our local collaborator relied on her personal and professional contacts to identify groups, and they helped us to find more groups. Our study consisted of 44 women and 4 men. Most participants had some formal education, with 43 out of 48 completing standard 8, which is equivalent to grade 8 in the US education system. All participants had a smartphone. These were typically a Techno or Huawei models. First, we conducted contextual inquiry using focus group discussions. This helped us to understand the structure of Chamas and how they operate. Our contextual inquiry findings suggest that all 7 groups had an executive committee that consisted of a group chairperson, secretary, and treasurer. Each executive member had a role. The chairperson convened meetings, the treasurer collect contributions from group members, and the secretary take minutes during meetings and archives group records. Each group also had a constitution, which consists of a set of rules for governing Chamas. All the Chamas that participated were registered with Kenya's Department of Social Services. Registering Chamas was an important part because groups needed a registration certificate to open a bank account. Participants told us that only the group chairperson and treasurer could be signatories on these bank accounts. Our findings on Chama's banking activities suggest that groups do not just engage in one banking activity. We found that Chamas have 4 banking activities, including savings, merry-go-round, table banking, and emergency fund. Group savings consist of an account where members contribute some amount on a weekly basis. Merry-go-round consists of a separate fund within Chamas where interested members contribute a fixed amount. These funds are given to one member at every month basis until all members have received. In addition to contributing money, they also contribute other materials, such as kitchen utensils. Table banking is a banking activity that allows members to access short-term loans from group savings. which accumulate from week to week. These loans are typically having a monthly interest of about 10%. Participants told us that a loan request is accepted once 3/4 of the members approve it. Each member had a small ledger book where they were recording their banking loans as well as how they are paying them. So this is one of the ledger book from one of the groups. Participants used emergency funds to pool funds that would be used for group members whenever they have an emergency, such as maybe their child is sick. Findings from our contextual inquiry helped us to make changes on the initial design of SmartChama. Specifically, we iterated on the initial prototype to include merry-go-round and emergency fund. We also changed the interest rate and loan approval rates to fit in with Chama rates. To evaluate SmartChama, we asked for the 8 participants from our study's first phase to interact with our new prototype. We provided participants with a link where they could download SmartChama app and install it in their phones. Next, we gave participants tasks to be completed on SmartChama. These tasks were creating a group account, adding members to the account, depositing money into the account, checking personal and group balance, requesting a loan, approving it, as well as sharing the money at the end of each cycle. We began our data analysis in the field by discussing the field notes on an everyday basis. We used Atlas TI to perform coding, write notes, and identify different themes. Focus group interviews were translated and transcribed. We also used affinity diagramming process to organize different codes into different categories. Participants told us that they thought smartphone-based applications require more education and expertise. For the 3 participants, told us that they were accustomed to USSD-based form of banking, such as M-Pesa. Participants faced challenges for the first time that they used SmartChama. These were mainly connecting to Wi-Fi and logging into the system. After using SmartChama, participants compared it with other platforms such as SportsPesa, a popular betting site in Kenya. They said that SmartChama's use of phone number to log in made it easy for them since they could easily remember it. Our findings also suggest that Chamas have different unique activities other than the standard activities I mentioned. These activities include collaborative businesses such as rearing livestock. For example, one group reared cattle for the purpose of selling them to generate income for the group. Other groups had social support activities such as encouraging women who have lost their husbands. Participants recommended adding these features on SmartChama. For example, the group that reared animals suggested adding a feature for withdrawing lump sum amount of money for business purposes. Participants' reactions to SmartChama suggested that digitizing financial activities could improve transparency within Chamas and make it easier for members to abide by their rules. Participants said that this would be a positive change from the banking systems they currently use, where only signatories have access to the account. This would allow all members to access group transactions, thereby improving transparency. Further, participants told us that digitizing activities could ensure that all members followed group rules. Privacy also emerged as a concern during our evaluation. It appeared that participants were concerned about other members knowing their shares for 2 reasons. First, participants seemed uncomfortable exposing their shares to other groups if they had accumulated more money than other members. This is because other members would rather bother them to borrow money from them individually. Similarly, participants seemed not to be comfortable exposing low shares to avoid being labeled poor. Our findings from our evaluation also suggested that SmartChama was perceived as an improvement over ledger books. For example, group secretaries said that they would no longer be moving around with notebooks during meetings to report transactions. Our study supports prior studies that suggest that money management in developing countries is a collaborative process. Digital financial systems for chamas should be designed so that all members have access to groups' financial transactions. However, banking systems in Kenya are based on personal form of banking and do not support access to group transactions for all members. This compromises financial transparency, which affects trust in these groups. We propose collaborative banking systems where all members have access to financial transactions in their groups. This should be done while respecting personal privacy in these groups. Kusimba and others suggested that chamas use multiple platforms such as WhatsApp and mobile money to manage their finances. In addition to this, our findings suggest that chamas also rely on ledger books to record transactions and keep their savings at a formal bank. Using multiple platforms to manage group finances poses challenges. For example, each of these platforms have their own drawbacks. For example, not all members have a WhatsApp account, and mobile money consists of security vulnerabilities, as other prior researchers have suggested. We propose that digital financial systems should provide all the four functions to reduce the barriers affecting chamas' success. We also learned that groups have different specific activities. We propose that digital financial systems designed for chamas should support personalization. That is, the group should modify the system based on their needs. Personalized functionality in systems is important because it ensures that the adoption of digital financial systems in chamas does not change how they operate. This study was funded by National Science Foundation, and we thank them for their support. We also thank Ms. Martha Otieno for helping us with this project while we're in the field. Thank you so much. I'll now take questions. My name is George Hope Chidziwisano. I'm a PhD student.
Thanks, George. And I think you're still, yes, you're still in the group. So do we have questions for George about SmartChama or reactions? I'm looking for a hand. Otherwise, George, I have one while we're gathering a couple other questions. I'll do the same thing I did with the other talks. One thing that strikes me is how many of the references, how many of the experiences that came out in the focus group were referencing other systems like WhatsApp and even SportPesa. How do you find the kind of level of penetration and kind of comfort with other systems is among the community that you were working with, and were there any notable patterns to inclusion and exclusion among those you were speaking to?
Thank you for that question. Can you come back? Can you come again at the end?
Just
the first part, but the last part.
The last part was, if to the extent that there were differences in who was familiar with systems like WhatsApp and M-Pesa and SportPesa, were there any patterns or concerns among who was familiar and who wasn't that would have impacted the way you ended up designing the system?
Yeah, so the issue of using other systems like WhatsApp and SportPesa came in different ways from different groups. Almost all the 7 groups, there were participants who mentioned using WhatsApp as well as using SportPesa. Of course, they don't use the SportPesa to send money to each other. It's simply like for betting side, but they just compared it as familiar, like to say they also use like phone numbers to log in, which is making it easier to log in on this system too. But in terms of WhatsApp, they mentioned it as using it to collaborate within these groups. I understand that my samples only like from Kisumu, where like almost all participants had smartphones. But if I go like maybe to rural areas where people not all people have smartphones, that would not be the case.
That's great. Okay, just a minute more, see if anybody else has another question. If not, I'm going to. Okay, George, thanks very much, and I'm glad we could make it work with the video.